I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today, I have a very special guest with me. He is the founder and CEO of Next Level University, a global top 100 podcast focusing on helping others reach their own unique potential in health, wealth, and love. With well over 2,100 episodes and more than 1 million listens in 180 plus countries, he's been doing this deeply meaningful work for more than a decade. And after accumulating more than 10,000 hours of coaching, training, and podcasting with all walks of life, he believes in a heart-driven but no BS approach to achieving both external success and internal fulfillment. I'd like to give a huge welcome to Alan Lazaros for joining us today. He is going to be sharing a lot about his background and some tips about how to be a successful businessman. So I would give a huge welcome to Alan. Thank you so much for coming on. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on today.
Noah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I remember 10 years ago when I first started my, second company. It was Alan Lazaros, LLC, what you'll never learn in school but desperately need to know. And I wanted to bring personal development to the masses and to the school systems, and no one cared. So I'm very grateful. It was crickets back in the day, and now things are rolling. So I'm very grateful to be here. I really appreciate it.
So introduce yourself and please tell my listeners a little bit about what you do behind the scenes for your career.
All right, so Kevin and I, my business partner, his name's Kevin, we started this podcast 2 years after I started Alan Lazaros LLC. I had a little podcast called Conversations Change Lives, and he had a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast, and my motto was be a fly on the wall for great conversations, and his motto was change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. And he was my first guest, and I was his first guest, and then we partnered up, and we had the worst titled podcast of all time, which was the Hyperconscious Podcast meets Conversations Change Lives podcast. And we, I think 20 weeks in or so, 20 episodes in, we went all in on the Hyperconscious Podcast, and then we rebranded to what's now known as Next Level University. So now things have changed a lot over the years, but essentially I am the CEO and CFO, so Chief Executive Officer and Chief Financial Officer of Next Level University, which is, as you mentioned, a top 100 podcast in the self-improvement, personal growth, personal development space. And we have an 18-person team now. I have 24 business owner clients, and we work with 113 podcasters and business owners from all over the world. And we had our first $100,000 month last month. So we're doing very well. We're growing. And the more important piece of that is we started out, we made no money the first year, and we only made $13,000 the entire second year. And that's between the two of us. And we both came from very successful careers before that, where we were both making well over six figures. And so we had to go all the way back to zero, so to speak, metaphorically, at least from the external world. And we had to rebuild this from scratch. We bootstrapped the company. we reinvested, and now we're coming up on $500,000 this year in revenue, and it's really been huge. So, but my main focus, my main goal, my main objective, my main priority as the CEO of the company is to grow the company, because, and not just aimlessly. So the metaphor that I use for my business clients is, the Apple's a good example, and most people know it, so I use it. So you've got the iPod, you've got the iPad, you've got the AirPods, you've got the iPhone, you've got iOS, iMac. There's a theme and a through line for the company. So my job is to grow the company by 7% quarter over quarter, which equates to 30% year over year, which means you double your company every 3 years or so. And that's really it. And ultimately, the more the company grows, the more resources we have to invest in team and equipment and tools, and the more people we reach. So we turn our passion into purpose, into profit, and it snowballs. And so that's the high level version of what I do. As you mentioned, I'm a coach, trainer, and podcaster. I have 11,228 as of today, coaching sessions, trainings, and podcasts. And I get to work with people all over the world on how to help them achieve their goals and dreams. And ultimately, what I've come to realize is most people don't have goals, or they have the wrong goals, or they don't know how to achieve them, and or they aren't skilled enough to actually execute against those. And so ultimately, that's what I'm here to do, is help people achieve their goals and dreams and reach their full potential. And that's, I guess, the biggest summary I can give you of who I am today.
It's such an impactful story. In your introduction and about section from your profile, it says that you kind of would consider yourself successful at an early age, but you have mentioned that you were filled with pain, regret, and abandonment challenges. Can you explain a little bit about what happened in your earlier years?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 3 main inflection points in my life. And I'm 36, so obviously a lot more than 3 things have happened to me. But I do think that these are the 3 that shaped me the most. The first one is when I was 2 years old. It was 1991. I was born in 1988, and I was 2.5. In 1991, my birth father, John McCorkle, my real last name is McCorkle, he died suddenly in a car accident when I was 2.5, almost 3. And my mom was 31 at the time. My sister was almost 6. And that was very sudden and very traumatic for my family. And I had a stepfather from age 3 to 14 named Lazaros. So from 1992 to the early 2000s was my stepfather. And we all lived together. I took his last name, I think, around age 7. And then he left my family at 14. So the first pivotal moment in my life was when my birth father, so it was John McCorkle, it was Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette, born and raised in Massachusetts. I was born and raised in Massachusetts as well. And John suddenly passed away. And that was very traumatic for his family and for my mom and for my sister. I was only 2.5, so I didn't really know. But obviously that's traumatic in a different way because I've never had a father. And then my stepdad was in my life. I took his last name around age 7, and he left my family at age 14. So I playfully refer to from age 3 to 14 as Boats and BS. And the reason why is from 1992 to the early 2000s, he worked for a company called they did hospital computers during the .com era. So the economic boom times, particularly in the United States. So the United States, a lot of people don't know the global economy, so I'll just give some stats here. So the United States is by far the largest economy on planet Earth. The next closest is China based on GDP. And in the 90s, the United States was just growing like crazy. Globally it was too, because the .com bubble was wild. But basically, not everybody had money, of course, but there was a lot of expansion. There was a lot of money. There was a lot of people just in massive abundance. And so that's why I playfully refer to my childhood from 3 to 14 as Boats and BS, because from the outside looking in, we had snowmobiles and we had motorcycles and we had boats and truck, and my mom drove a BMW, and ski trips. We lived on a big pond, small lake. There was a lot of, abundance, best way to put it. And then when my stepdad left, he took 95% of the income with him. And then the .com bubble burst kind of around that same time. And we went from boats and ski trips to now I get free lunch at school because our income is so low. My mom trades in her BMW for a little Honda Civic. We don't have cable anymore. And I shop at Salvation Army for my clothes. Now, at the end of the day, we're not going to starve. We still had a nice house, but he got the apartment building and the yacht. We got the house and the dog. And it was kind of, how do we keep the house and the family type of thing. And I was the man of the house at 14. And I looked into my future, and no generational wealth, no trust fund, no dad. We're in some trouble here. And that was the second inflection point in my life that was really, really difficult for me. That was the hardest year of my life in hindsight. I started doing some therapy in my 30s, rewatching the movie of my own life and trying to understand it. At 14 years old, I was a freshman in high school. My sister was a senior. I was prepubescent. I usually joke, you think I look young at 36. Imagine me at 14. And my stepdad left, took his entire extended family with him. I still, to this day, have never seen or spoken to a single one of them. I have talked to my stepdad on Facebook Messenger a little bit, but I've never seen the man in person since. And that same year, my mom got in a fight with my Aunt Sandy, and we got kind of ostracized from her side of the family. And so I kind of lost 3 families by the time I'm 14 because we didn't associate with the McCorkles much anymore. The Lazaroses were gone, and then I've only seen or spoken to 2 human beings from my mom's side since I was 14 years old. And so I had all these abandonment challenges, and so there was 2 trauma responses that I had from that. So the 4 trauma responses in the human condition are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawn is what I did socially. So abandonment was my challenge. So I became this sort of chameleon, fit in, don't challenge anyone, appease. And that's what fawning is to appease others. And just don't lose any more friends and family. Unconsciously, that was my focus. But behind the scenes, when no one was watching, it was aim higher, work harder, get smarter. It was fight for my value, I became this super achiever. And back then when my stepdad left, I went from, I hope I get into WPI. It's like a mini MIT, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's an engineering college, one of the best engineering schools in the world. And it was $50,000 a year back then. And that was my dream, to go to WPI. And I went from, I hope I get in when my stepdad was around, to even if I do get in, I can't go because our income is so low. So I got straight A's through all of high school. I got what's called the President's Academic Excellence Award. It's signed by George W. Bush. It's behind me. And I got all the scholarships and financial aid that I possibly could. I was the obnoxious kid at the award ceremony that just kept going up, award. And yeah, and I got into WPI. I got my undergrad in computer engineering. I've actually spoken there several times since. And I got my master's in business, and then I was off to the races. And now remember, I was broke in high school and college, so I was used to going with very little. And all of a sudden, I'm making a lot of money. So I went from tech company to tech company to tech company. I went from iRobots to Sensata Technologies to Tyco Safety Products to Oz Development to Simplex Grinnell. All these different companies. I eventually landed at a company called Cognex. And they sell industrial automation equipment into manufacturing facilities all across the world. It's called machine vision equipment. And I went from inside sales engineering. I started an inside sales engineering team there. And then I went to outside sales engineering, and I managed Vermont, Connecticut, and Western Massachusetts. Their motto was work hard, play hard. I used to say work hard, play harder. Then I got in my car accident. So I'm 26 years old. It's 2015. I'm up in New Hampshire. And I'm supposed to yield. It's a dark winter night. The snowbanks are covering the yield sign. I end up on the wrong side of the road, cross the double yellows, head-on collision. My fault. Fortunately, no one was killed, because if they were, it would have been my fault. And this was not a fender bender, though. This was 30 miles an hour, head-on collision. It was a lift-kitted pickup truck, and fortunately, I was driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat, because this Volkswagen was what I used to call the tank. I just was really big on cheap cars because I wanted to invest all my money, and I went without for so long. I didn't need nice things. And so that car totally saved my life. I used to call it the tank. It was a German engineered steel trap of a car. But anyways, so head-on collision happens. And that was my sort of second chance my dad never got. That was my quarter-life existential crisis that was my, okay, I almost just lost my life like my dad. He died at 28. I was 26 at the time. And this is the second chance he never got. So I'm going to turn it all around. And so before that, I had high school friends and college friends and corporate friends, and I partied and I had fun, and I in hindsight, it's very clear. I put the social world above the real world. I always say we all live in two worlds. We live in the social world and we live in the real world. The social world is the wedding photos, and the real world is the actual marriage. And you better have the syntax right. You better be marriage first, wedding photos second. Otherwise, you're in some trouble. It's a metaphor. And so we all have 1,000 reputations, but we only have one character. And so I was more focused on the social world than I was the real world. And I flipped that script. I was externally successful and internally unfulfilled. And then I flipped the script. I went all in on fulfillment and inner work and personal development and personal growth and self-improvement. And I dialed that up to 11. And I did that for 10 years. And here I am 10 years later. And I started a company called Alan Lazaros, LLC, what you'll never learn in school, but desperately need to know. And I think I'm still on that same sort of mission. And now it's just called Next Level University, obviously. And now we help people get to the next level of their life. Next level you, pun intended, not next level Alan, not next level Kevin, next level you. And we help you achieve your goals and dreams in life, love, health, and wealth, podcasting, and business. And it's become quite a thing. So it's been a hell of a journey. And those are the 3 inflection points, though. Dad died at 2, stepdad left at 14, car accident at 26. And those 3 things, more than anything else, have really shaped the man and the leader that I've become today.
Wow, and having everything that's happened to you and gone through all that, it takes a lot of courage to be able to get through that. Why is self-improvement important to you?
Well, honestly, looking back, my mom and stepdad had what I refer to as a pleasure-centered paradigm. If you've ever read the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, he talks about paradigm. Paradigm is a fancy word for what you believe is the purpose of life. And I kind of, as a kid, saw that growing up and adopted that paradigm unconsciously. My paradigm now is growth, contribution, and quality of life. But back then it was have as much fun as possible, achieve as much as possible. It was friends, achievement, and fun. And my mom and stepdad, their paradigm was fun. Have as much fun as possible. And while on the surface that looks really good, it's actually very detrimental to the long term. You can either have a lot of fun today at the expense of your future, or you can build today for a bigger, better, brighter future. And it's kind of the investor mindset versus the consumer mindset. But ultimately, self-improvement, personal development, and personal growth is really important to me because, quite frankly, I am wildly disappointed with how little of it I saw growing up. So I playfully refer to where I grew up, a small town, small-minded town. I playfully refer to where I grew up as the Boulevard of Broken Dreams. And I saw these people growing up, these adults. Everybody hated their job. Everybody couldn't wait for Friday. Everybody drank too much and too often. And everybody, I remember seeing married couples, you don't even like each other, never mind love each other. And so marriage scared the hell out of me, and so did life. I looked at their lives and I thought, God, that looks terrible to me. And so as an existential thinker, I just thought to myself, I got to figure out the formula to not end up old and miserable like everybody else. That's actually one of the quotes I used to say when I was a kid. And I've been on that journey ever since. And self-improvement, personal development, and personal growth, I do believe is the solution. I believe ignorance and apathy are the problem. We either don't know enough or we don't care enough, or both. And I think personal growth, self-improvement, and personal development are the solution. I think that if we all sweep our own porch, the whole world will be clean. And we all have to start by leading by example and getting our own shit together. And I think that that's why I do what I do, because ultimately, I never understood why other people didn't want to reach their full potential. I still don't. I think that we all have goals, and I'll use my business partner, Kev. Kev has a dream car. It's a Mercedes AMG GTR. I don't really care about cars, but he does. It's a $270,000 car, something like that. And I said, brother, if you want to achieve that car, that's going to actually be a byproduct of you reaching your full potential in this business. He will be able to afford that car within the next 10 years for sure, if we stay on the trajectory we're on. But only if we get better every day, only if we grow the company every day, only if we stay focused on the right persons, places, things, and ideas, only if we stay more skilled and focused and work. And so I think a lot of people want things in life, but they don't understand that beneath that iceberg is actually self-discipline and self-belief and self-worth and self-efficacy and self-respect and books and learning and growth and focus. To me, reaching your full potential is the goal, and helping others do the same, whatever that unique potential is for you. And then all your goals and dreams are a byproduct. I think the reason we have dreams is to embark on an epic journey toward our true potential. You see a movie or a book, and you see these characters that are called to adventure. It's called a call to adventure, the hero's journey. And that's what goals and dreams are. You go on this adventure to try to achieve your goals and dreams, and who you become along the way is someone unique and uniquely suited to serve the world. So to me, I think that's what life's about. I don't think life is about just having fun. If it was, it would be more fulfilling. We all know what it's like to have a blast and then be unfulfilled. We all know what it's like to be with a man or a woman and be unfulfilled. And that's why I believe in true love, and that's why I believe in merit and meaning. And I do believe that dreams of the heart are the call to adventure that will force you to reach your full potential and to stay within your calling. And I think that as esoteric and fortune cookie as that sounds, it's absolutely true. And I'm an engineer, so I'm not woo-woo over here. This is a scientific thing. And goals and dreams, if you're wandering around aimlessly looking for hedonistic pleasures, you're in some serious trouble.
I kind of talking about your podcast and how successful it is. Did you ever see yourself being a podcaster? And tell me a little bit about how podcasting has helped build your brand.
Nice. So Noah, I'll be fully transparent here. So years and years and years and years ago, when I was in high school, I had a bunch of dreams. But I had two main ones. I had a bunch of the fun ones. I want to play basketball, and I want to be a pro snowboarder, and I want to be a pro gamer, and all this kind of stuff. And I did some of that. I was a semi-pro gamer for a time. But the two main career trajectories that I thought were practical, that I intended on, and again, I used to be too much of a coward to share this because this is definitely weird. It was going to be lawyer, politician, president. I remember I took a law class sophomore year to figure out whether or not I wanted to be a lawyer, or it was going to be engineer, MBA, CEO of a Fortune 50 tech company like my hero, Steve Jobs. So I built my first computer at 12 with my buddy Kiki. We used to argue who was smarter, Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, Microsoft or Apple. And I was just this weird, esoteric, techie, math science guy. I call it STEMBIF, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, business, and finance. And I just had these huge dreams. But the two main paths were going to be lawyer, politician, president, or engineer, MBA, CEO. So no, I did not ever intend on being a podcaster. However, when I was working for a company called Sensata Technologies, I was listening to something called the Hillman Morning Show. It's a very famous show in Boston and Massachusetts. And there was a woman on that show named Danielle Murr. And she's actually a dear friend now. And we had her on the podcast, and she was actually a client for a long time. So she's a close friend of mine now. But which is wild because back then she was just a hero of mine. She was someone that I looked up to. And when your heroes not only become your friends, but also you end up being their coach, it's a very fascinating transformation. And I hadn't intended on being a podcaster, but I remember after my car accident, I had Conversations Change Lives podcast. Kevin calls it a YouTube channel because I didn't have it as an RSS feed or podcast yet. And he was my first guest, and I just kind of fell in love with it after that. Then I had a coach. Early on, I had a coach. His name was Alex. And he said, okay, let's write down all your dreams. And I said, okay. And I gave him all of them. Fitness model, fitness competitor, fitness coach. I want to be blah, 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 all of them. He said, okay, hypothetically, If you had to choose just one, I said, no, no, no. I'm not choosing one. I'm going to do them all. And he said, just hypothetically, Alan, just hypothetically, if you had to go all in on one of them, which one would it be? Because I had, author and TED Talk. And I had a bunch of dreams. And I said, honestly, it would be the podcast. And he said, okay, why? And I said, well, I want to practice my craft. I want to speak into other people's lives. I want to add value. I want to have an impact. And honestly, our listeners are reaching out. We're doing very well. I'm connecting with people on social media. And most importantly, I get to practice speaking without needing a speech. I was sick of doing one speech every couple weeks. I wanted to practice more. And I didn't want permission from other people to be invited to speak in order to practice my craft. So podcasting was a great opportunity for me to get better. And so I went all in on the podcast. He said, well, here's the irony. Here's the paradox. If you go all in on that one, you can have all the others. And that was absolutely true. So after that, I went all in on the podcast. Kevin and I started ramping up from 1 episode a week to 2 episodes a week, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and then 5 to 7. And now we do an episode every single day. We have almost 2,200 episodes now. We still record an episode every day. And the average length is about a half an hour. I think it's probably about 25 minutes now. But it's 1% improvement in your pocket, personal growth and success from anywhere on the planet, completely free. We are the male role models we wish we had growing up, because he grew up without a father as well. And so ultimately, that's where it all started. And I didn't know I was going to be a podcaster, but what's ironic and kind of funny is I did end up a CEO of a tech company. We have an app called Optimal that's launching, and it's a habit tracking app. And in some ways, we are a tech company. So it has come full circle, which is cool. But no, when I was a kid, I didn't intend on being a podcaster. Podcasts didn't even exist until 20 years ago when Steve Jobs announced an iPod and a broadcast and how it's a podcast. And I actually have that on the top of my Instagram. If anyone wants to go to my Instagram account, it's at Lazaros, Alazaros 88. 1988 is the year I was born. And at the very top, there's actually a speech of Steve Jobs 21 years ago talking about the very first launch of a podcast.
This is how dumb I am what podcasting is. I'm sort of like you in this regard. I didn't expect to be a podcaster at all either. It was more of a passion or more of a hobby that I wanted to do. And I've learned that once I've started doing it, I've thought, you know what? I think I could actually do this for like a career. Now, do I still want it as like a dream job? No. But I've told people if I end up being a podcaster for like my full-time job, I wouldn't be mad about it. I would not be totally bummed because I've really liked it. I didn't really get into podcasts or know about podcasts until 2019, 2020, and I've heard from multiple people that said, "Oh, I've had a podcast for 20 years." And I thought, didn't podcasts just come a thing like a few years ago? And they're like, "No, it's been like 20 or 30 years." I'm like, "What? What?" I was like,
No. So it is. I actually have the speech right here. 20 years ago, Steve Jobs right here.
Subscribe to a podcast. Okay, great. So let me start at the beginning and tell you what it's all about. Podcasting is a word that's a concatenation of iPod and broadcasting, right? Put together podcasting.
Nice. So that's 20 years ago. 20 years ago. So it was, I believe, let me chat GPT this because I'm curious. Keep going though.
Yeah, I was just like so shocked that people have been doing podcasting for so long, and the more people I've interviewed that have been longer podcasters or have had more experience in it. For reference, I've only been podcasting for about 5 months at this point. So I'm fairly new to the game. And
Nice.
so when I've heard people say, "Oh yeah, I've been a podcaster for 8 years, I've been one for 19 years," I'm like, it was around for that long? And they're like, yeah, it's pretty amazing to see how well. I think a lot of it, however, I think a lot of podcasts has developed tremendously over the past few years. And, but yeah, I'm like you, podcasting to me's helped with my public speaking a little bit too, which I went to school for journalism, so that kind of also played a key role in speaking. But this podcast has really helped, and it's also been showcasing my journalism skills as well. A lot of people think that it's not, but I've told people journalism comes in all four different ways. It's not just news, it's not just newspapers or magazines. There's a lot of broadcasting stuff that goes into it as well. And a lot of the degrees and some skills that I've learned have really gone into it, like interviewing. Journalism's number one thing you do is interview people,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's for news stories, magazines, newspapers, articles. I mean, you interview for anything if you're in the journalism field. So so being able to really fulfill that skill has been really beneficial to me, and it's also really helped with my interview skills as well. So I've always told people, I said, it's I'm showcasing my degree by interviewing people and doing a lot of like sit down interviews and writing stuff. So I mean, it's good practice. But yeah, I think podcasting's. I'm like you. I never imagined to be a podcaster myself. I always thought it would be a hobby, but I didn't really expect it to be like kind of a job too.
Well, I'm grateful. I mean, we wouldn't have met if you didn't. So, the very first podcast is generally credited to 2004 when former MTV video jockey Adam Curry and software developer Dave Weiner created a program called iPodder. So, 2004. So, 21 years ago. 21 years ago.
It's just crazy to believe it's been around for that long. It's
I
just
think it's crazy
crazy.
that 2004 was 21 years ago, man. How old am I, It's wild.
Let's see, 2004. I was 2 years old when that happened.
Okay, so I was 14, man. That's wild.
So I was,
This is good, man. This is good. Yeah, 21 years ago, podcast. So podcast industry is growing, and it's good. It's a really good way to reach people globally. We are heard in 180 countries. There's only 195 countries on Earth, so it's really cool.
I guess this could be a question to you since you're more professional with podcasting, and I'm pretty sure some other people have this question too. But when people are listening to other countries, because I'm like you, my podcast for some reason has gone internationally as well. I'd have to pull up some of my statistics, but I've seen that my podcast has been listened to in countries that I didn't think would listen to it. Like I know there was some places in Japan that have heard my show.
Nice.
I think there was some in China that listened to it. But I'm always wondering, like, okay, but I know that they're listening to it in these countries, but can they understand what I'm saying? It's like, are they just listening to white noise? Is there some kind of like trends of what it's translated? I've always been curious because I thought,
Well,
because
Noah, the first thing to understand about that is that a lot of countries teach English. So, one thing I'll share, and I think this is important, and I'm not saying this as an American, I'm saying this as a human being of planet Earth. The number one language for the economy is English. And the reason why is because the largest economies on planet Earth are English speaking. So, the largest economy on planet Earth is the United States by far. As of 2024, it was 25 trillion was the GDP. And the next closest was China, which is 19. A lot of people don't actually know that. So a lot of people think China's the biggest economy. It's not. It's not even close. And ultimately, English is, fortunately or unfortunately, the language of the economy. So we have a team, and we have some people in the Philippines, and they all speak English. And they are taught English from a very young age because that's where the money is, so to speak. And so I think that a lot of people if you're going to do a podcast, I was on a podcast once and it was from Germany and they did it in English and they have some other episodes that are in German. But I actually think in the 21st century, we should be focused on a global marketplace. Imagine if Apple was not selling iPhones in other countries. Just because it's headquartered in the United States doesn't mean it shouldn't think about international. And so English is the language that the majority of the world learns. in order to have a successful career globally. And the 21st century has very much blurred the lines between local and global, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think it's good. Like when I say I'm heard in 180 countries, how many of those countries do not have English as their first language? That doesn't mean they can't understand Kevin and I. And so if English is your first language, that's a huge advantage. If English is not your first language, it would behoove you to learn it for your career.
That makes sense. I just hope that they're not listening to it and learn English from me because of how illiterate I can be. I'm like,
Yeah, well,
if they want to
I,
learn English, my podcast is not the best resort because I don't talk well. Even though I have a degree in journalism, I still talk very, very broken English. It's like, as a Southerner, no.
Noah,
But
where are you from? Where are you from?
I live in Alabama.
That's right. We talked about it. So I had a client and colleague from Italy. His name was Alessandro, and he learned English from TV shows. Growing up as a kid, he would just watch TV shows to learn English. And I thought that was fascinating. So at the end of the day, maybe you do Duolingo on your app. Duolingo is an app where you can learn other languages, but I digress, Noah. I leave it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I admire a lot about what you do because it's so inspiring to hear someone that is so successful, especially with how the job market is right now. I know. I guess one final question that I kind of want to leave you on is, the job market is it's difficult right now. It's not the best that it's ever been, and people are kind of having a little bit of a struggle trying to find a balanced job. What advice would you give to someone that's desperately trying to maybe find a job or they want to kind of become CEO of a company? What advice can you give to them to where they can finally and easily reach those goals?
Well, I think the first thing there is there is no way to easily reach anything, in my opinion. So that the first thing I would challenge is if you want easy, you're in trouble, I think, by default, because life is inherently hard, regardless of what the internet wants to tell you. But what I would share, I have a client, her name's and whenever a client hires me, we do what's called a dream statement. And it's basically just a sentence of why they hired me. Like, I am useless to you if I don't know what you want me to help you achieve. Seriously, I'm not fun at a barbecue. Like, I am an achiever through and through. I will help you set and get goals, period. And yeah, we'll do identity work and inner work and we'll heal and whatever's the bottleneck to getting the goal, we will work through. It's called targeting the constraint. But even and if the wrong goal is the constraint, we'll actually change the goal too. So a lot of people come to me, they say they want this, but what they actually need to do is set a different goal because that's not aligned with who they are. But Christina came to me and she wanted to get an aligned job. So her dream statement for my coaching was to get together, to get my finances together, to get my finances in order, and to get an aligned job because she had gotten furloughed from her last company. And I said, okay, boom, let's rock and roll. So we do dreams, goals, priorities, metrics, habits, skills, and identity. It's called dreamlining. It's reverse engineering goals and dreams. This is my point. I have the numbers up right here on my other computer. I said, I promise you, we will get you an aligned job within 12 weeks. Hire me, buy a 12-month package. I promise we'll get an aligned job. So you're going to pay me a certain amount, and I'm going to get you a job that's going to pay you way freaking more, probably 50 times more than what you paid for my 12-week program. Okay, awesome. But don't get it twisted. We're going to have to work. So I said, these are the numbers. The very first coaching session, I said, here's the deal. 100 jobs you apply for, you're going to get 30 responses. Of those 30 responses, 10 of them are going to interview you. Of the 10 interviews, 3 of them are going to offer you a job. And of those 3 job offers, you're going to like one of the offers. That's the numbers. It's 110. It's 130, 10, 3, 1. 130, 10, 3, 1. That's just how it works. Now, If you're really, really, really good at this, you can bump those numbers up slightly, but those are the percentages. So for you, Noah, you have 100 listeners. 30 of them will ever reach out, you'll ever hear from. 10 of them will actually connect with you and have a meaningful conversation. Of those 10, 3 will want to work with you. Only one of them will be aligned and work with you long term. That's just the numbers, okay? And we can do that with everything. I've been in sales. I've been in business to business, business to consumer. I've sold everywhere from the CEO of General Electric to, these listeners of our podcast. And I've sold all different kinds of things, tech products. So at the end of the day, these are the numbers. So I have the numbers up right here with, and I was scared too because it was basically the last week. So she didn't get a job offer. So she didn't get any job offers until the last 2 weeks of the 12 weeks. So I told her I was shitting kittens. I was like, because I promised her 12 weeks or your money back. And so she applied to 100. I have the numbers up right here because we track metrics and habits. She applied to 140 jobs. She got 30 responses. She was interviewed 8 times and she only got 1 offer. And luckily that 1 offer was a good offer that was aligned. And she applied to all kinds of jobs. I mean, some were as big as Nintendo and some were as small as, this place down the street. But that's the numbers. And so the first answer to your question, Noah, is there is no easy path to anything. And the second thing is you have to know the numbers. Life is a numbers game. I'm an engineer. I'm the math and science guy. I understand that I'm biased. Everything is numbers. We work with 113 podcasters and business owners, but we've been on, between Kevin and I, we've probably met 7,000 podcasters. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there and meet people and go on interviews and go to podcast movement and go to events, and not everyone's going to be aligned. If you meet 1,000 people, 100 of them, if you meet 100 people, 30 of them will be peers that actually want to connect with you. 10 of them will be interested in working with you. 3 of them will actually work with you, and 1 of them will stick around long term. And those numbers are true for everything. People always say, well, I've been applying to jobs. There's no jobs. There's plenty of jobs. You only applied to 3. When I was in LA in my early 20s, I applied to like 30 a day. So a lot of times people make excuses when in reality they just don't have the work ethic and they're not willing to tolerate failure. I think the pain and sadness of rejection and failure are very hard to deal with. I do something called the Next Level Sales System every single day. I'm 111 days in a row as of today, and it's 35 touches a day. So it's 5 posts, 5 likes, 5 comments, 5 DMs, 5 WhatsApp messages, 5 emails, and 5 invites every single day. And Noah, if I've ever sent you an email, that's because I have the Next Level Sales System and I'm trying to connect with like-minded people. And my leadership principle is simple. Number 1, lead by example. Number 2, keep the wrong people out of the castle. Number 3, bring the right people in and bring them up. And by in, I mean connect with them, and up as in challenge them to reach their full potential. And ultimately, that's what all of us have to do if we want to be successful.
Well, Alan, I appreciate you so much for coming on. I mean, you give some great advice, and there's a lot of stuff that unfortunately we aren't able to get to today, but maybe at a future time you can come back on and share some more advice. But if people would like to learn more about what you do, and if they want some advice and if they have questions, where can they best find you, and what social media's accounts are you willing to share?
Yeah, Noah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. If you ever want to do a round 2, just say the word and we can talk about all kinds of stuff. We do goals, business, coaching, training, podcasting. I want to help people reach their potential, so I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak into the lives of your listener. I'm rooting for you, my friend. If anyone wants a good coach or a good mentor, or we've got free stuff, we've got paid stuff, we do monthly trainings every month for free. Between the 3 of us, Kevin, Emilia, and myself, we have 3 companies, and we are all into inner work, outer work, personal development, personal growth, self-improvement. We have a global community. We have sub-communities. We've got a fitness group. We got all kinds of stuff. So the website is nextleveluniverse.com. We've got a book club. We've got a journal called The Dreamliner. We've got something for everybody. But when I say something for everybody, let me preface it. I think every business owner needs to have their absolute, every person really, I think needs to have their absolutely people and their absolutely not people. So my absolutely people that work really well with me are people who are humble and have really high work ethic. And they have a sincere interest to reach their goals and their dreams and their full potential. And if that's you, please reach out. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can Google my name. You can ChatGPT my name. But we all have our absolutely not people as well. My absolutely not people are people who want big rewards for minimal effort. There's two types of people I can't stand. One of them is what I call spoiled brat syndrome, which are people who think they deserve things by default with very little effort. And I'm not interested. And number two is bullies. I'm not interested in bullies. So if you want to tear other people down to make yourself feel better, don't ever come anywhere near me. And if you want big rewards for minimal effort, I'm not going to be the coach for you. Again, I respect everyone, but we all have to learn over time who we work well with and who we don't. And so if you have work ethic and a sincere interest to reach your potential, please, please, please reach out. We're going to get along great. And if not, we're not for each other, and that's okay. I don't want to waste your time or mine. Noah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And as I always will do, I will put all of his links in the description box below. I'll put all of his social media accounts down there as well, so it's all easy access for you and everything. If you would like to keep track of me online, please feel free to follow me. Instagram and TikTok, Lethal Venom Podcast on there. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, it's Noah's Podcast. As well as follow the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora, as well as other platforms as well. Um, Feel free to follow the podcast to get notified of when new episodes come out, as well as social media accounts for new background stuff. Another huge thank you so much to Alan for coming on today. Um, Again, more than welcome to do round two with you soon, because I think you have a lot of good, helpful tips and tricks that hopefully we can get into in part two soon. But to my listeners, thank y'all so much for listening. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Lethal Venom.